if a business is constantly missing its monthly numbers, that's usually a bad sign. If you can get the team right, often everything flows from there. So that's one of the things we focus on right from the outset. What is that management team roadmap?
This is what you said in the last survey, and this is what we've done. Yeah. So actually they're like, oh wow, my voice does matter.
We want people that are going to listen to what we say and take it on board. And if they disagree, absolutely fine. But if they just refuse to listen to any ideas or advice or support, that's often challenging.
No egos. That personal brand of the founder becomes such a hugely important commercial entity in itself. And in your career, what's the most surprising lesson you've learned?
That is a challenging one. The most surprising lesson.
So welcome to our latest episode of the Conscious Finance podcast. I am delighted to be joined by Edwin Davies, who is the investment director for BGF, which is one of the UK's most active private equity firms, also B Corp. And Edwin's background is starting out life in PwC, I believe, in the Big Four. Yeah, then climbed the ladder in corporate finance. Joined BGF 12 years?
Yeah, 12 and a half years, almost 13 years ago now.
Wow. And since then has invested in over 25 businesses personally and been on over 10 boards during that time. So really, really amazing to have you on the podcast, Edwin. And thank you for coming along.
Thank you for having me. Really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, let's get straight into it then. So your story is quite an interesting one. I'd love to hear how you started out studying chemical engineering as a degree and ended up working in investment. How did that happen?
Yeah, it's a bit of a random one, really. And when I was younger, I never really knew what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I liked science, I liked maths, and wasn't sure which path to go down. And someone suggested to me chemical engineering as a degree, because that brings together science and maths and puts everything together. Yeah. So I explored that. Thought it looked really interesting, so I did my chemical engineering degree.
Was it interesting?
It was tough. It was very interesting. I liked the analytical side of it. That was great. But sort of after a couple of years, I realised that I don't really want to end up working on an oil rig or in a chemical plant. Fair. So I started to explore other options at that time, and then applied to a grad scheme at PwC. And got the role, thankfully. So that was brilliant. And it was like going back to university again when I joined PwC, because there were hundreds of us in the intake, all studying for exams together, all learning the ropes.
And was that the traditional audit path, or did you go straight into corporate finance?
Yeah, so went into audit initially. Yeah. So I was in London working in the audit team in banking and capital markets. So I spent about 80% of my time on the JP Morgan audit.
Okay.
A team of about 30 people. So
good start.
Pretty much year round. It was interesting, but
and intense.
Very intense. Yeah. The hours were very long, but it was good fun because as I said, it's like going back to uni. It was a real team atmosphere. So while we were working really hard and really long hours, we were having a good time alongside it. So it worked out okay.
Yeah. Interesting. And then from there, what sort of took you down the path to explore corporate finance?
Well, as I said, I was working on the audit of JP Morgan a lot of the time, so really far removed from sort of how a business works and that side of things. And I really wanted to start working with smaller businesses and interact more with CEOs and CFOs. So I decided to move out of audit, move back to Bristol, which is where I grew up, and join Grant Thornton in the corporate finance team.
Great.
And there, so instead of sort of working with a multi-billion pound investment bank, I was working with businesses turning over 20, 30, 40 million, growing SMEs and interacting with CEOs, CFOs. And it was just a different kind of perspective, and really got to understand how businesses work and that side of things. So,
how did you make that move? Because there's a lot of people out there that are in audit and would love to get into corporate finance, but often that leap is quite difficult because you're going from a pure technical role into a much more commercial role. How did you bridge that gap and build confidence with Grant Thornton to take you on?
Well, I think a lot of the skills you work on a grad scheme at somewhere like PwC are really transferable. So a lot of it is how you interact with people, understanding the numbers. So that side of things was okay. And then a lot of it was learning on the job when I took the new role, but that's kind of expected. If you've got that good grounding from somewhere like PwC, it sets you up well to move into that.
It's a good pedigree, isn't it?
Exactly.
Worth the blood, sweat and tears.
Definitely. And it was really tough. Looking back, it was a really tough 3 years, but I did enjoy it, and I'd do it again if I was starting out again.
Yeah, I mean, I have similar thoughts about my early career in recruitment. So I started out in big global corporates, which, do want their pound of flesh, and it is very KPI driven, and it is super long hours. And well, it was back then. It's not as much now, but it was intense. But I wouldn't change it because
you learn a lot in those times, don't you?
Yeah, well, it gave me a real appreciation for work ethic and how hard work is worthwhile in the right context, and gives you that just good grounding and a good level of grit and resilience, which I think you need in any challenge in your career.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So then from there, was it BGF straight away?
Yeah, so I was with Grant Thornton for a couple of years in Bristol, worked on a lot of transactions there, and at the time BGF had recently set up and they were building out their Bristol team. So I think they had about 4 offices at the time and had probably done 15 investments or so.
Oh, wow.
They were looking to build a bigger presence in the south.
So quite early days then for BGF, because they're huge now, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it was set up in 2011. So it's been going quite a while now.
That's amazing.
So it was, very early days, back end of 2012 when I joined.
Yeah.
And I just saw a really exciting opportunity. They were doing something very different to other private equity players in the market. And I saw a chance to sort of get in early and be part of that journey. And it was a bit of a risk at the time because the model was unproven at that stage. But roll forward almost 13 years and we've achieved a huge amount. So BGF's now invested over 4.5 billion in over 600 businesses.
Wow.
So
it's one of the biggest players now, really, in the UK.
Exactly, yeah. So probably the most active growth capital investor across the UK. Got about 16 offices and we're doing 40 to 50 new investments per year across the UK and Ireland.
Amazing. So what is it that's kept you in the game for so long?
Every day is different. I find it really interesting interacting with founders of businesses, CEOs, CFOs, and just there's a new challenge every day. So it's not as if you're going to work and doing the same thing and going through the motions. There's always something new, a new business to look at, different industry, a challenge with a particular portfolio company. So that variety is really interesting. And comparing when I was working at Grant Thornton, I was in the due diligence team. So doing due diligence on an acquisition. So you're doing a bit of financial analysis and then you're on to the next project and the next project. Whereas what I do now, it's that full life cycle from going out, finding interesting businesses to work with, leading the investment process, taking a seat on the board, following investment, and then through to exit and seeing that whole story from start to finish and getting a really successful outcome is really satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting job. It's quite sexy when it comes to finance, and I imagine in terms of what you're doing day to day. And there's probably a lot of people listening that are thinking, how can I end up in that type of role? What would you say are the sort of core skills somebody early on would need to build up to reach your level within the investment space?
So a big part of the job, especially in the earlier years, is financial analysis. So you need to be on it in terms of how to read a P&L and balance sheet and financial modelling and that side of things. So that's a core skill set. But it's also about being commercial. So we want people that can take a step back and look at the commercial issues as well as the financial issues and look at the bigger picture. And a big part of our job is assessing risk and reward and making judgments on management teams. And a lot of that comes over time. You build that experience on the job. But people have got to really want to do it and really be interested in supporting growing businesses, because it is a hard job and there's lots of challenges. And if you're not really bought into it, then it can become more.
Is it a question of nature versus nurture a little bit?
Yeah, I'd
with
say
that skill set.
Yeah. Some people are just not cut out for it. Others are and really thrive.
Is it still quite a demanding, long hours job?
Yeah, it is, and it goes with it. Sort of goes in peaks and troughs depending on where you are in terms of a deal process. So when you're in the middle of a deal, the hours can be very long and stressful, and yeah, it is pretty challenging. And other times it's a bit less intense. So yeah, it's a bit up and down. You always get that in a deal led business.
Burning the midnight oil went to get the deal over the line. I've heard that from many CFOs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you've got to have that commitment and drive to be able to do that.
And what do you do when you're not making deals? What do you get up to at home?
I've got 3 young kids, so that keeps me very busy.
Yeah.
So one's almost 6, the middle one's 4, and the youngest is almost 2. So yeah, that's
Got your hands full?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Plus a golden retriever.
Love that.
So that keeps me busy.
Yeah.
And then football's my sort of main hobby outside of
Nice.
work.
I'd love to engage in some football chat with you right now, but I'm terrible when it comes to football. I've got absolutely no knowledge whatsoever, so we'll park that one. But yeah, I mean, juggling 3 kids whilst being an investment director for some of the most attractive deals in the UK must be pretty intense. How do you find that balance between home life and work life?
It's very challenging sometimes, but luckily I've got a very supportive wife that does an amazing job with the kids. So that really, really helps with things. But I think it's also the flexibility to sort of manage our time as we see fit, and just making sure there is time to spend with the kids as well as get the job done, really. But it is a fine balance.
Definitely. Yeah, I can feel you with that. And think,
but it's very rewarding as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have to sort of force myself to make the time, because I'm quite passionate and quite obsessive about my career and my work and what I do, that I can just let it, take away with me sometimes. And I have to set really clear boundaries so that when I'm home, and I'm present and I'm there, and keeping an eye on the clock and not working too late every night, and getting back in time for bed every night, and doing my bit when it comes to school runs and things, because you don't get those moments back, do you?
No, exactly. And I wouldn't want to be one of those people that just is a slave to the job and doesn't get to spend time with the kids, and then suddenly their kids are all grown up and they've missed out on that really important part. So that's really important.
Definitely. So there's going to be a lot of CFOs and finance directors and probably founders and CEOs out there right now that are banging their head against the wall when it comes to raising capital, finding investment, growing their organisation. So what are you seeing across the market right now?
It's an interesting market at the moment. It is more challenging than it has been in previous years, and there's lots of global factors that are really influencing that. And some businesses they're struggling with their day-to-day trading and they're not hitting their numbers. Other businesses are struggling with recruitment and retention. So there's lots of challenges, but there's still some really good deals being done. But what we're seeing currently is it is quite polarized towards certain markets. So whereas in 2021, e-commerce was the really big sector, everyone was piling into that. There were loads of deals done in the space and very high valuations. That's really dropped off over the past few years. Now a lot of it's focused on software, SaaS businesses, recurring revenue, high growth. So lots of money is pouring into those kind of sectors. So when there's a really good business in that space, it's attracting a huge amount of interest, and valuations are going sky high. And then certain other sectors, it's really hard for founders to raise money because they're not the hot sector at the moment. But it does go in waves, and different sectors come to the forefront. So expecting to see a lot more in the defence industry over the next few years. More software, more business services. Healthcare is another good sector at the moment. Very, very resilient, and lots of opportunities there.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. I mean, would you say that the appetite with private equity investors is there, but the business performance perhaps isn't for enough organisations that are sort of fundraising ready?
Definitely, yeah. There's a lot of private equity firms with a lot of money ready to invest and looking for opportunities, but there's probably fewer opportunities right now than there have been. So all of the money is getting diverted towards a few, but for others, it is pretty challenging.
Okay, so as an investor yourself, when you get under the bonnet of a business, what would you say are the things that get you really excited, and what are the red flags?
A key part of our assessment is the management team, and if you've got a great management team, everything else can almost fall into place. So that's probably right up there in terms of things that we want to assess. So whether it's someone that's been there and done it before and they're just doing the same again, or whether it's someone that's just got a really clear plan of what they want to do and how they want to do it, that is a really key part of it. And then we look at the market the business is in. Is it a growing market or a declining market? What's the business's share of that market? And are they doing something disruptive? Are they the new Uber or something like that? Are they approaching things in a very different way, and therefore that growth opportunity is there? And then financial analysis is a big part of it. So getting under the skin of the numbers and sort of looking at the historical track record and how does that compare to what they're forecasting going forwards. What wider team is, I've touched on team, and we don't need to invest in businesses with fully formed teams. That's an area that we can support them with, but we need to have at least one person in that team that is highly backable from an investment point of view.
Okay, so that could be the CEO, it could be the CFO.
Yeah, it's typically CEO or founder of the business that we think, as a minority investor, because we're not getting involved in running the business day to day, there needs to be someone there that we really trust and we can back. But if they need help building out that team, whether it's bringing in a CEO, CFO, COO, or it might be a founder that wants to step back over time and bring in a new CEO, we can support with all of those kind of things.
Okay, so they don't need a fully fledged board from day one.
No.
It's just more about that initial early leadership.
Exactly.
Is it right? So when you say, having a strong leadership presence, other than been there, done it before, what are the other character traits or track record that you would typically look for?
I think ambition is a really important thing. So we want to back business owners, founders, CEOs that have an ambitious vision to create something of scale, and for an investment to work for us, there needs to be strong growth. So if someone's sat there thinking, actually, I'm happy with the business as it is, I don't really want to take any risk and grow the business, that's not for us. We want.
I imagine they wouldn't come knocking on your door if they did.
No, it's unlikely, and they're more likely to want to sell the business or just carry on running it as a lifestyle business at that stage. But someone that's really ambitious and driven and wants to succeed at any cost is usually a good sign. And
okay, so if they've got all of the boxes ticked when it comes to the leadership side of things, what are the other things that are a minimum standard for you to consider investing?
So they need to be investment ready, and that's something that we can support with in advance of a process as well. But they need to be all over their numbers. They need to be preparing the monthly management accounts, putting everything together into a format that's easily digestible for an investor, because lots of investors have lots of different opportunities to look at, and it makes our lives a lot easier and a process a lot smoother if it's all being pulled together into an appropriate format.
And what is that appropriate format?
It's so monthly management accounts, a forecast financial model going out at least 3 years on a monthly basis, looking at P&L, balance sheet, cash flow. Lots of businesses might have a budget for the year ahead, but no further than that. Some businesses don't even have that. They just sort of go along with no forecast, no plans, no budget. So that's something that we need. But again, it is something that they can develop over time as we're getting to know the business. But that's pretty key.
What about sort of golden rule metrics when it comes to things like EBITDA or year-on-year growth? Are there sort of minimum standards there that you need to see?
It really varies by sector and type of business. So in some sectors, we might want to see EBITDA of $1.5 million plus. In other sectors, like If it's a SaaS business, it might not be profitable yet. It might be doing 3 or 4 million recurring revenue, and that might be interesting enough if it's growing at 20% plus per year.
Okay.
So it really varies by sector.
Okay. So because I guess your target market is more that mid cap, right? SME plus of a certain size. So the minimum is ideally 1.5 million EBIT. And then if it's a SaaS business, 20% year on year growth on the top line or ARR.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fine.
And a lot of it is more about where do we think the business can get to rather than what has it done historically. So if we see a business opportunity where we think this business can scale and we can support that, then that helps. It doesn't have to have achieved strong growth for 3, 4, 5 years prior to investment. It's about what can it achieve with our investment and our support going forwards.
Mm-hmm. And for those that aren't there yet, what other avenues would you recommend if they're sort of earlier on in their journey?
So there's some good angel networks out there. So high net worth investors are looking for opportunities to support businesses that might not be ready to raise institutional funding. So a lot of businesses, they either take money from friends and family or angel networks initially, and then there are some other investors out there that will look at some earlier stage opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
But
that more the VC space?
Yeah, exactly. But we would encourage businesses to start the conversations early and build relationships over time, because a lot of the investments we do are businesses that we've met maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Okay.
Start building that relationship, getting to know each other, and then when the stars align, you go on and get the
That's
deal.
quite good to know, because I think a lot of the CFOs and FDs that I speak to are almost obsessed about having a perfect proposition ready for that first conversation with a private equity firm.
Yeah.
Whereas you're sort of saying, no, actually, you can have earlier conversations to help them build that proposition.
Yeah, there'll be some private equity firms that want that. They want something perfect to land on their desk, and that makes their life very easy. Our model is about scale, getting out and meeting lots and lots of businesses, getting to know where they are in their journey, when the timing might be right, and building those relationships over time.
Uh-huh.
Because as a minority investor, we're backing those teams. So the more time we've got to assess that team over the years, the better, really.
And in your experience, let's say, the due diligence is in motion, and you've decided, this could be a good target for us. What are the things that tend to slow a deal down or completely kill it altogether?
So often it's the trading throughout an investment process, and if a business is constantly missing its monthly numbers, that's usually a bad sign.
Yeah.
And often that will cause deals to delay, and an investor might want to see another month or two trading, see if they are getting back on track, whether it's a short-term blip or a longer-term trend. Sometimes it's founders changing their minds, and they're not sure whether they really want to do something, because they might be at that sort of crossroads where they're deciding, do I sell, do I take investment, do I just carry on as is? So sometimes they take a while to make decisions. Other times something might come out of due diligence that no one was expecting, and then it takes a bit of time to work through those kind of issues. Sometimes there's management challenges. So there's all sorts of things that can cause that. Problems with the legal process. So deals can be done very quickly, but sometimes they do take a bit longer than everyone expects for various reasons.
And for people out there that are maybe just not sure what is the right path for them to help grow their business, what advice would you give them?
I'd say chat to people about it and understand what your options are, because lots of people don't know what their options are. So they might think they've got limited choices, and there might be a founder who's been running a business for 10 years and they think their only option is just carry on as is or sell, not knowing actually that there are several other options that they could pursue. So a lot of the deals we do, there's an element of de-risking for founders, so them taking some cash off the table at the point of investment rather than having to sell the whole business.
Okay.
So that people often get to the stage where they've reinvested all of their profits, so they've got a lot of value tied up in a business, and they might at that stage be a bit risk adverse and not want to grow too much if it's going to put the business at risk because they've got all their eggs in one basket. So we often do a deal where we come in, we buy equity from them, they take some cash off the table, we might put some more money into the business as well to help fund that growth. But if they've been able to de-risk and maybe pay off a mortgage, put some money away for a rainy day, buy a boat, whatever they want to do, they might be more willing to go on and take risk and grow the business.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of halfway house between selling a business now and doing nothing. It's actually, they can take some value off the table now, but they don't have to relinquish control. And often when we talk to founders about that, they don't realise that that is an option, and it's quite attractive to them because they might still be relatively young and not want to go and sit on a beach and do nothing. So they don't really want to sell their business. So being able to de-risk now, but remain in control and keep growing for another few years with a supportive partner that can help them ultimately grow a bigger business, that is really attractive. So that's often a key driver of people wanting to do a deal with us.
And what are the trade-offs for a founder? Because there is a stereotype out there when it comes to private equity that they can be, command and control and very much breathing down your neck, asking for KPIs every week and like data, and almost can cause that freedom that a founder has to make quick decisions to disappear because they want to approve every single decision that is made, so it can sometimes slow progress, and also that creative freedom that perhaps a founder really enjoys. Is that stereotype valid?
Yeah, there's different approaches from different kind of investors. So there's a whole spectrum from private equity investors that want full control and they will act like they own and control the business, to the other end of the scale where some investors are much more hands off. So we can be anywhere on that spectrum depending on what business owners want. So some of them want much more support from us, and we can do that. Others want us to be a bit more hands off, and we can do that as well. But anyone going down the private equity route has got to realise it's no longer their business to make decisions on their own. They need to have others in the loop. But our approach to that is we don't want to get involved in the day-to-day running of a business. So if it's a day-to-day decision, crack on. You don't need to speak to us about that.
Okay.
But if it's something more strategic that is going to drive value in the business or potentially detract value from the business, we want to be involved at that sort of level. So that could be anything from making an acquisition, raising bank debt, issuing shares to employees, recruiting someone over a specific salary threshold, which would have been agreed in advance. And we'd see that as someone that's at that sort of top management level, so not sort of day-to-day recruits. So we want involvement in those kind of decisions, but it's a very quick decision-making process, so it shouldn't slow things down.
I'd imagine that's quite a nice check and balance for the founder, just to say, am I knocking on the right door here, or is this a silly decision?
Exactly. And yeah, some founders are going through that process already. They might already have a board in place, but lots of them don't. And our approach there is we want to be involved in those kind of decisions because we think we can add value to those kind of decisions. But our role is to provide constructive challenge and advice rather than telling them what to do or how to do it. Yeah. But it gives them another sounding board, someone to speak to and say, actually, are you sure that's the right idea? What about this? Which is quite valuable.
Yeah, interesting. And just another question for the finance community. I think your approach is very different to maybe what I've heard from other private equity firms, in that you don't have to have all belts and braces, perfect pack prepared beforehand. But some other firms seem to be quite obsessed with the data and the molecular level of slicing and dicing your customer segmentation and understanding demographics and understanding lifetime value and all the different KPIs and metrics that they need to sort of understand the business in a much deeper level beyond just P&L and balance sheet. Do you look for things like that as well? And if so, what are the top ones that you tend to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, data is important to us too, but probably not to the extent that some PE houses go with it. And often, before investment, businesses just aren't tracking what we think the right data is. They might have their own KPIs, but they might not be focused on some of the key areas that we would like to see. Sometimes businesses, they're not really tracking their pipeline and pipeline conversion in a way that we think is very valuable. Because if you're doing that, if you know, if I've got X amount in my pipeline and 30% of that converts, that's a good lead indicator of your performance over the next 6-12 months. And do you need to be out in the market more growing that pipeline, or do you just need to focus more on converting those kind of opportunities? So those kind of metrics are important. For software businesses, it's that customer acquisition cost, lifetime value, that ratio, that's really important. So we will work with businesses to focus on those right KPIs over time and making sure they're in place, because ultimately, if you are doing that right, it can lead to better value on exit. And we had a really good example of that business that we invested in back in 2018, and they just weren't tracking their pipeline and conversion. It was quite a lumpy sales business. So often things would slip to the right a bit, but there was a lot of inherent value in that pipeline. They just weren't tracking it in an appropriate way. So we helped them develop that over time, and ultimately when we got towards exit, they got more value from the buyer, who could really buy into that inherent value because of the data we'd built up over 3 years. They could see, okay, I could see how that is going to convert into value. So ultimately it led to an enhanced value on exit.
Great, that's good to know. So with the role of a CFO, it'd be good to sort of understand your perception of what makes a great CFO today. But before we get into that, I guess there's a lot of organisations that you probably talk to haven't even got a CFO, maybe not even internal finance team. So what do you think is the right time to consider getting that number one in finance?
As soon as possible, I'd say. And lots of businesses leave it until the last possible moment. And it depends on the stage of the business and how big it is, and can it afford those kind of roles. But often the conversation we have with founders, they would much rather spend money on a heavy-hitting sales director, because they can see direct correlation between bringing a sales director in, that's going to drive revenue, whereas they see a CFO as a cost to the business. Our view is it shouldn't just be a cost. The right CFO should be able to add strategic value. They should be able to cut costs in certain areas. So overall, they should more than pay for themselves.
What's the biggest business cases that you've seen in terms of immediate value a CFO brings to the table?
A lot of it is improvements in reporting, KPIs, which allow people to make better and quicker business decisions. It's cash flow modelling and forecasting, so avoiding potential trouble moments when you run out of cash. And we've had a few of those kind of situations where people just haven't been looking at that appropriately, and suddenly there's a cash hole a few weeks out that no one had expected. So having a good CFO in that's looking at least 6 months forwards in terms of cash is really, really important. But often there is that reluctance because people just see it as a cost, or they see it as someone that just produce management accounts and annual accounts. That's absolutely not the case. A good CFO should be strategic. They should be a right-hand person for the CEO. They should be involved in key strategic decisions and direction, and ultimately add a lot of value. And we often see that sometimes founders are reluctant to bring in a CFO because they might have a good finance team, they might have a good head of finance already, and they think if we're bringing in a CFO, it's going to demotivate the existing team. But actually, it should be a positive for that team, because they can learn from this new person coming in and ultimately grow their own career.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it should go without saying, really, that a CFO's role is primarily that strategic partner, as well as providing that commercial insight, helping a CEO drive their decision making, but done in a thoughtful way, so it's well thought through, it's challenged, it's interrogated, so that investment is spent wisely. That's
a really important point. A CFO shouldn't be saying yes to everything. They should be providing that challenge to the CEO, because often there's no one else in the business to provide that challenge to a CEO.
It's that voice of reason,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Which I think we all need as business leaders, because I'm, as a founder myself, I can get excited by shiny objects, and sometimes I just need someone to rein me in. I use my business coach at the moment, who I always bounce ideas off of. And yeah, often he'll say, "No, Leo, you're barking up the wrong tree there." And we all need that, don't we? And I think that's the role that a CFO should play day to day. But often it's helping the CEO understand the value of that and appreciating that partnership. It's a partnership. It's not a master servant. It's not a cost center.
No.
It's a strategic advisor to you.
Definitely. And another way of a founder getting that kind of support and advice is from non-execs. So that's a big part of our model as well. When we invest in businesses, we like to see independent non-execs coming in, acting as that sounding board.
Yeah.
And we've got a big network of people that we can bring into those kind of situations, depending on what the business needs, whether it's someone with particular sector experience or just someone that's been sat in the founder's shoes, been there and done it, and can provide that kind of experience to people, and that's really, really valuable as well.
That's probably something that people are interested in hearing. Actually, is I speak to a lot of CFOs and FDs that want their first NED opportunity. How would you advise those people to get their first board advisory role?
I guess it's about being out there in the market, networking, and the more boards they've sat on as a CFO, the more likely they are to be attractive to businesses looking for that additional experience. But I think it's sort of out there networking with advisors, bankers who are meeting with lots of businesses on an ongoing basis, and therefore might be able to come across some of those kind of opportunities. I think that's really important,
because it's a slightly different skill set, isn't it, to being on a board for a business to being an advisor to the board, because it's almost you've almost got to withhold that temptation to roll up your sleeves and start doing.
Exactly. That's a real challenge that some people face, particularly if they've been in that CFO role for a long time. They're very used to being sort of in the detail, and then suddenly having to step back and not be tempted to get too involved can be quite a challenge.
And it's also that horizon scanning ability to really understand the macro factors that could affect business performance, which I guess as a CFO you're always doing, but I think as a board advisor you've got to almost see it more holistically.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess moving on to your experience on boards, you've been on a board for over 10 boards over your career, which is amazing. Currently on 3. So you must have, across multiple sectors, whether it's wine manufacturing, SaaS, like what are the common challenges that you see businesses face as they scale?
Yeah, so there's common challenges, whether it's a manufacturing business, whether it's a SaaS business, whether it's a wine business. All of them go through the same kind of challenges as they grow from 5 million to 10 million, or 10 to 20, 20 to 50. It's around people, it's around systems, it's around recruitment and retention is really important. Those are the kind of things that we look to work with businesses to address throughout that growth journey. But if you can get the team right, often everything flows from there. So that's one of the things we focus on right from the outset. What is that management team roadmap? Where are the gaps? And sometimes there aren't any gaps, but often there are. And some of those gaps might be sort of in a year or two's time where you might need a role, but not yet. But it's about understanding what does the team need to look like to grow this business from 20 million to 50 million turnover, for example. When do we want to bring those roles in? Once you've got that, it's around, okay, what systems is the business using? Are they appropriate for the business of this scale? And are they appropriate for that business when it's double or treble the size? And it might be a CRM system. It might be their sales pipeline system, Salesforce, or things like that. Often businesses are working off spreadsheets, and it's really hard to track data as the business gets to a certain scale, you need proper systems where at the click of a button you can see what does your pipeline look like, how's conversion, all of those kind of things. So that's really important. Recruitment and retention, being able to bring in the right people and retain them. So growth shares or equity EMI schemes is really important when we invest in businesses. So we want to ensure that the key people in the team are incentivized to grow value, and we want them incentivized to stay with the business, because ultimately if they've got some shares, they can make some good money on the exit. So sometimes businesses have already put that in place. Other times you've got a founder who owns 100% and hasn't given equity to anyone else. So we always like to see a pool there for key existing employees and future employees, people that are gonna help drive value in the business.
Yeah, definitely. Other than skin in the game, what are the ways that you see businesses help improve their retention?
So one thing we encourage is for businesses to do fairly regular surveys, so at least every 6 months or so, of all of their employees, just to feel the pulse of the business. What are people really thinking? Because at the top, you often don't know what everyone else is thinking. The CEO might think everyone's happy, but they might not be. So doing those kind of surveys and acting on the responses, because often some interesting things come out of those kind of things, and if you act on them early, you can really improve things.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. We at Core3 we do quarterly employee surveys, and we advise a lot of our clients to do the same. And often some of the objections are, well, nobody really bothers filling them out, and it's just an admin exercise. And I think that one of the main reasons why those types of surveys or feedback loops can fall down is that a business doesn't demonstrate what is done with the feedback. So a good mechanism that we use is let's say you do the survey once a quarter, and then in your town hall or whatever your quarterly update might be, then you communicate this is what you said in the last survey, and this is what we've done. So actually they're like, oh wow, my voice does matter, and it is worth doing these surveys, and they are making improvements based on what we said.
Yeah, I think that's really important. But also, if there's something you haven't addressed, telling them why you haven't addressed it.
Yeah.
Not just ignoring it.
Yeah, that's a good
really
point.
Important.
Definitely. So there's a huge crossover between, I guess, what you do and what I do then. Like a big focus on people and culture.
Definitely.
Culturally, do you get under the weeds there a lot with an organisation that you're on the board with?
Yeah, so culture is really important, and often that's one of the key reasons people are worried about private equity. They think that will change their culture if they bring in an investor, and sometimes it might, but we're really conscious about that, and we work with businesses to really ensure nothing changes day to day, or nothing too material, so they don't feel like they've been taken over, someone else is in control, that kind of thing. So that's really important, and it's important to us as an organisation as well, as we've scaled from sort of startup to almost 200 employees. Retaining that culture across the business is really key.
Definitely. And when you say attracting talent, what are the tips that you often give businesses to help them improve their talent acquisition strategy?
I guess it's sort of using the right people, whether it's recruiters to go and find the right people, but it's also making it an attractive place to work, and a business with a good vision of how it's going to grow, how it's going to make the role more interesting for its employees, and potentially have other opportunities for those employers because it's a growing business. That's really important. Having the right kind of benefits, having a nice office environment, all of those kind of things are really important.
Basically, employer brand.
Yeah, that's really,
because that's something we do a lot with our clients as well. Because more often than not, you go and walk the floors of a business, and this is amazing. The culture's great, the people are great. There's exciting things happening. The vision's awesome, but then you go on the company website and there's nothing. It's just like a landing page, and then you go on their social media and there's nothing. So bringing that story to life is so important to help organizations attract talent and stand out in quite a crowded marketplace. So we advise that a lot with our customers is what's kept you here for so long? Like what are the stories where people in the business have had in terms of wins and successes? Why do they love working here? Get behind the camera, do some videos of the CEO talking about the vision, the HR director talking about the culture, the CFO talking about their strategy for the team. It just paints such a better picture, and we see talent attraction increase by 50% by just doing those employer branding exercises. Because then suddenly, when you're approaching a candidate, rather than just sending a job description, it's like, well, here's the CEO talking passionately about the vision. And here's the HR director talking about the benefits and the culture and why it's a great place to work. And actually, here's somebody who's doing the job right now, telling their story about why they love working for that company. Suddenly, you've just got this much better picture. And that's not that hard to do.
No, it's not. But lots of businesses neglect that.
No.
The first place someone's going to look if they come across an opportunity is on the website. And if it just looks dull and boring, and they've got another opportunity where they're doing all of those things you've just mentioned, it's going to be an easy choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. So you've talked quite a bit about that sort of growth journey. I mean, what would you say when you say how important that leadership team is? What do strong leadership teams get right that others perhaps don't?
I think a big part of that is making sure everyone around the table is aligned and pulling in the right direction. So not having a founder that just makes decisions all on their own. We've had some of those kind of experiences. So founders that are able to make key decisions, but bring people on that journey and consult with others and take views from others on board. That's really important. So a founder or a CEO that is coachable. They might not necessarily agree with everything you say, but we want people that are going to listen to what we say and take it on board. And if they disagree, absolutely fine. But if they just refuse to listen to any ideas or advice or support, that's often challenging.
So no egos.
Yeah. That's really important.
Good stuff. So, and then on that, with then building the next layer of leaders, how much do you think about succession planning within your organisations?
That's massively important, and we start doing that right from the outset. And often it depends on what the existing shareholders want, and sometimes they've got a clear plan that they want to take on investment, build out the management team, take a step back over time, and when we get to the eventual exit, they want a clean break. Others have a much longer term time horizon and they're willing to stay involved for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So they're less worried about the succession planning. But we want to make sure that conversation is had from an early stage, just understanding what each of the players around the business wants and working with them to achieve it. So we've had lots of examples where the founders do want to take that step back over time. So it's about understanding their timescales, how committed they want to be, and when they want to take that step back, and then planning well in advance of that. So you can't get to 6 months before you want to sell the business and then think, okay, let's bring in a new CEO and I'll be able to get a clean break. You've got to plan for that well in advance and get someone in, make sure they're embedded. Because otherwise, any buyer of the business in the future will see that as a key risk. If that founder CEO, if they still feel that they're heavily involved, they've got key customer relationships, they'll want to tie them in for another year or two post deal. Sometimes founders don't want that.
Yeah, it's interesting, like striking that balance, because there is a bit of a movement these days towards personal brand and how founders and CEOs have to be the face of the business. Yeah. Have you read that book, Key Person of Influence?
No.
It's all about that, basically, where that personal brand of the founder becomes such a hugely important commercial entity in itself, that you almost create, but also then you're creating an immovable object where if all avenues lead to the founder, then you're not necessarily succession planning then or empowering the rest of your team to grow. So what are your thoughts on that when it comes to personal brand and how much a CEO or founder should be the face of the business versus the opposite?
I think it depends on the circumstances. Sometimes it's pretty important, but in those scenarios, if they are the face of the business and that important, they're going to have to stay involved for the longer term.
Yeah.
So it's about understanding those time horizons. But again, coming back to the ego point, you don't want someone that feels they're all important and they're the only person that is of value in a business, because that's not good for culture. That's not good for growth.
Mm-hmm. Love that. So I think just a couple of closing questions. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to CFOs out there right now that are trying to attract investors?
I think be prepared. Really think about the type of investor you want to attract, and start those conversations early. Don't leave everything to the last minute. Make sure you've got your ducks in a row. So pull your info together. Make sure you understand your business, and just be ready. And depending on the type of investor, that readiness point could be very important.
And for CFOs out there right now that are thinking this way, but maybe don't feel fully prepared, or the business performance isn't yet where it needs to be to attract investors, do you welcome people to reach out to you directly to sort of start that dialogue and help support them for that readiness? Yeah,
definitely, because then you can have a conversation around where's the business now, where's it looking to get to, and then you can feed into that timeline and what do they need to do to be ready, because often people don't know exactly what it takes to go through a process. So having those kind of early conversations, and it might be a conversation around, okay, you need to pull together this kind of data, or it might be, actually, if you recruit this kind of role now, that will make things a lot easier, particularly in circumstances where a business doesn't have an FD or a CFO. Sometimes it can really help to get that in before you go through that investment process. Someone that's been there and done it before.
Yeah, definitely. So what's the best way to reach out to you? Is it LinkedIn or
email? Yeah, all the details are on our website. Find me on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. And in your career, what's the most surprising lesson you've learned?
That is a challenging one. The most surprising lesson, I think it's not that surprising, but I think gut feel. Trust your gut instinct. Sometimes and this is often around sort of assessment of management teams and that kind of thing, and often sort of early impressions are really important. And if you've got a niggling doubt about something, there's probably a reason for that. And sometimes you can sort of try and look past those kind of things and carry on. But I think sometimes that gut instinct is really important.
It's really interesting, actually. I think there's so many times in my career where you make a decision, and maybe it's hiring somebody, or investing in something, and you're just like, just doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, if you decide I'm just going to go for it, it's not the right decision.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's interesting. Do you follow Simon Sinek much? He wrote the book Start With Why, and he said he talks a lot about the psychology behind gut feel, and how actually it's not in your gut, it's in your limbic brain, and it's that part of the brain that controls emotion and language, and it's not something that your rational brain can actually put facts or figures behind it, because it feels more emotional. It's like that gut feeling, and actually we're much more intuitive than perhaps we give ourselves credit for. So yeah, I think that's a great point to finish on, is trust your gut.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Edwin, for joining us. It's been great, and hopefully that's been really eye-opening to a lot of people out there that are maybe just really unsure about where to turn or where to go when it comes to scaling their business. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So thanks for listening to the Conscious Finance podcast. It's really appreciated. And if you can help us increase our impact and inspire others, it would be much appreciated. All we ask is just subscribe to the podcast, give us a like or drop us a comment. It really does help get the word out there and expand our reach and hopefully inspire others to drive their impact further. Thank you.